Hey guys, how's it going? So today, basically what I want to speak a little bit about is speaking. So that's not actually something I've mentioned at all really in my previous videos up to now, until last week when I released my 3-month update and I mentioned that I'm going to be speaking on Friday the 8th of February, which would be about 3 months, just over 3 months after I first started. So the reason I haven't spoke about speaking yet is basically because I don't think it's the most important aspect. Basically what's more important is how much can you comprehend over what you can say, because if you can't say something, there's normally a way to paraphrase it, but if you don't understand what the other person says, then you've got no hope. So when you do start speaking, you basically hit a glass roof as far as your comprehension will take you. Also, I think to be able to understand what's being said, you need to, in general, know a lot more words than to say something, which might seem a bit weird, but if you think about it for a second, you'll realise that in English, or your native language, or whatever language you're fluent in, then if you want to express something, there's usually at least 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe more ways to express that. So if I learn, say, a word, say I was taking Cantonese for example, and I teach you to say you're very smart, and I say "Lei hou sai lei," and you learn that and you remember sai lei is smart. So then I'm in a conversation with you later that day and I go to say the same thing, you're so smart. Wow, lei hou lek sai lei, that was completely different to what I said a minute ago. More or less the same meaning. So you can see how you can express the same idea in different ways. So you learn A, and then if someone comes to a conversation and people say B, then you're not going to understand. So this is why in general I think comprehension is a lot more important than what you can say. But speaking is still an important part of the process, and in order to speak well, you eventually need to spend a lot of time speaking. It doesn't happen overnight. So in Cantonese, on italki, I have booked over 100 hours of lessons on italki alone, and that's only maybe half of my speaking time, if that. So I've spent well over 200 hours speaking in Cantonese, and that's not even including like all the input stuff I did. So, and there's still a lot of room for improvement. So that just goes to show that in order to speak well, you do need to spend a lot of time speaking. So basically what I wanted to talk about today is when I think is the optimum time to start speaking, and as you can expect with a vague question, you'll get a vague answer, so it depends. Everyone has different goals, so there are 3 things that I think you should consider when you're trying to decide when to start speaking. So first of all, what do you want to achieve? What are your goals? Are you just wanting to go to the country and be able to order 2 pints of beer? Are you wanting to be able to ask for directions? Are you wanting to enjoy simple conversations? Are you wanting to read books? Are you wanting to become fully functional and work in a professional environment? So all of these things require different amounts of time, different amounts of dedication, and this can affect when would be the optimum time to start speaking. So the other thing that you need to take into account is, when do you want to achieve this by? So what is your deadline? And obviously this needs to be proportional to what your goal is. So you don't say, I want to achieve a full working proficiency in Spanish after 3 months, because that's absurd. You won't. It's going to take a lot longer than that. If I wanted to work as an engineer, say in Spanish, I'd probably need to spend at least a year at be a very push, in ideal conditions, maybe looking at 2 years to be able to work comfortably in an engineering environment, and a lot of reading around my subjects. I'm going to take 2 extreme examples of these last 2 points to demonstrate when is the best time to start speaking depending on what your goals are. So we can take a situation A. Say I want to achieve a basic level of conversational fluency, so I can converse on a variety of simple topics, nothing too demanding, nothing too complicated, but I can express my ideas with a lot of mistakes, and I can generally have a pleasant chat with people about simple topics. And I want to give myself 3 months to do this. Well, because in order to even talk about simple topics you need to speak a lot, then you want to speak early because you've not got very long to do it. Hence, speaking even after 1 month or 2 weeks or as early as that probably might be optimum to achieve these goals given your deadline. So if you take something at the opposite end of the spectrum, say I'm learning and I want to achieve a full-on working level proficiency and basically do everything that I can in English, and I want to give myself 5 years to do that, well, then the biggest obstacle to you is building up your comprehension. So you can start speaking really, really late, and the better you can understand, the easier it's going to be when you do start speaking. So say if I was learning, Spanish, and I'd give myself 5 years to do that, then I can go easily 3 or 4 years without even saying a word and just purely focus on input, and by that point, I'd be able to comfortably read novels, I'd be able to understand everything on the TV, everything on the news and all of that, and my brain would be absolutely flooded with Spanish. So when I do open my mouth, it's going to sound not perfect because you still need a lot of practice, but you're going to get most of the way there, and then in that last year I can refine the actual speaking part of it and just speak. So obviously these fall on opposite sides of the spectrum, and I'm guessing for most people it's going to be somewhere in between, like me. So you generally got to pick appropriate and kind of have a bit of a think about these things, and it doesn't have to be concrete, just kind of a vague idea of what you want to do. There's also one other thing I haven't actually mentioned yet, which is probably it might not seem like it, but it's probably the most important, and this is psychology. So I was in a live stream last month, and shout out to Ronan mentioned that the most difficult thing for him was himself, and saying he's likely to give up and beating himself up, maybe he's not as far as I'd like to be and stuff like that. And I have to say 100% I agree with him 100%, because learning a language is very simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. You just need to spend the time, and eventually, if you do it for long enough and you're spending time with the language, you will learn eventually. So psychology is super important. If you're absolutely terrified by speaking and you're not confident in the process, you don't think you will ever be able to speak well, and you're really disheartened and discouraged by the fact that you don't think you'll ever be able to speak your target language, then probably speaking early on in the process is the best thing to do, because when you actually speak to people and you get communication, even if it's on simple topics, that motivates you because it's real, it's with a real person, and that can give you the motivation to carry on and really push. And then once you achieve that, then the next step doesn't seem so daunting. But if you take the other end of the spectrum with someone like me, so I've been through the process before, I'm confident and comfortable with the fact that I'm not going to understand very much at first. It's slowly going to become more familiar. When I first speaking, I know it's going to be difficult from experience, but I also know from experience that it's going to get easier the more I do it. So really, psychology doesn't become as much of an issue for someone who's got more experience, so I can tend to just go with whatever the most efficient thing is, which, say if I gave myself 6 months, would be speaking later, after 3 months, say. So that's generally my thoughts on when you should start speaking. So if you're watching this video, I'd encourage you to think about what you want to achieve, what deadlines do you want to give, and even if you've not got any hard deadlines, I'd encourage you to set some soft deadlines at least, so you can work towards it and get some sort of model on, I'd like to be this good after X amount of time, because then that gives you a framework to work with. When you do decide it's ready to start speaking, what can you do to make the transition less painful and generally more enjoyable? So the biggest tip is, first of all, to find a safe environment to practice with. So your first time speaking is going to be very, very bad, and you're going to probably, if you're anything like me, when you're about to start, you feel very, very nervous. You think, should I pull out? What if I mess up? And all these thoughts start come flooding into your head. So I like to use italki.com to get my speaking practice, because I can go with a native speaker who I'm paying for their time, so they're obviously going to be supportive because it's in their interest for them. Not only this, but because they're experienced teachers, then they're going to have seen every situation under the sun. So anything that I think I'm going to be going through, then you can almost guarantee someone else would have done exactly the same thing. So if I make a mistake and accidentally swear at them, like it happened in Cantonese a few times, then it's not the end of the world. They'll know it's a mistake. They'll probably laugh, you can laugh, and you can both move on. Tip number 2 is what you can do is make sure you've had some exposure. So I've had 3 months of exposure prior to my first conversation, and that's quite intensive. So the better your comprehension is, the easier it's going to be to start speaking. The final thing, and this is especially important if you're speaking early, is you need to develop what I like to call a toolbox of phrases. So these are just simple things that you can say and use to acquire more language. So generally the ones I learn are, can you repeat that please? Can you write that down? If you're on Skype, they can type it. Can you speak a bit slower? How do you say X in Spanish? By learning a few of these phrases that you're most likely, especially in the beginner stages, going to need to say a lot, you can use them over and over and over again and really use these to acquire more words. So I'm going to be posting my first time speaking in Spanish on my channel next week. Stay tuned for that. So I've spent 3 months of very intensive input, but I haven't spoken a word so far. So if you want to see what sort of thing you can expect after 3 months with pure input and speaking on my first time, I'm going to give you a very realistic idea of what to expect. So you'll probably notice me in my session saying, can you write that down? Can you repeat that please? Can you say it slower? How do you say X? And that's completely fine, you know, that's normal, and I think it's a great way to get started and try to keep in the language as much as possible. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you found it useful. I really want to thank you for watching and for supporting my channel. I really appreciate every view, every like, every comment. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.